Hey guys, what's going on? Watomarmelon here today, and today I'm going to be bringing you sort of a ranking of the different Yu-Gi-Oh artworks as they pertain to, how collectible they are. So the consideration, or what we're trying to get after here, is if this card artwork was printed as a Starlight Rare, how would it perform relative to other cards? Specifically other collectible cards, and right now we're not really caring about playability at all. For example, if Red Eye's Dark Dragoon was printed, or better example, if Forbidden Droplet, which is a very impactful meta relevant card nowadays, was printed in Ultimate Rare, it might outperform many of these cards on the list because, people want it in their decks because it's very powerful. But that's not something we care about. Maybe 10 years from now, if it gets power crept, it's not going to be worth a whole lot. And that's sort of what we're thinking about here. And so the future high rarity printings that I'm considering are sort of Ghost Rare, Ultimate Rare, Collector's Rare, and Starlight Rare. And one of the big considerations we have to take into account is, what are the current high rarity printings for this card? If it's already been printed in most of those, it might take a little bit of a hit. But, for very, very iconic cards, it doesn't matter as much. So the tiers that we're going to be going after here, first off, I'll just let you know what the top card is. It's SDK Artwork Blue Eyes White Dragon tier, okay? I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of debate about that, and, I'm not trying to make this list based on my own personal preferences, more so what I think, general Yu-Gi-Oh collectors prefer. And I think that SDK Artwork Blue Eyes is king. Okay, if that was printed as a Ghost Rare and Ghost from the Past 2, I don't know of a single other card that would outperform it. I don't think there is one. And then we go on to tier 1 and then all the way down, I think, to tier 5 in this video. So there are going to be 6 tiers total in this video if you include the 1 card tier at the top. So SDK Artwork Blue Eyes White Dragon tier, I don't think I really need to go into a whole lot of detail. This card is king. It's the grail. If it's printed in Ghost Rare, it's going to do the best in the set. If it's printed in Starlight Rare, it's going to do better than any other card. If it's printed in Collector's Rare, it's going to do better. If it's printed in Ultimate Rare, it's going to do better. And notice how this card hasn't been printed in any of those rarities, or this artwork hasn't been printed in any of those rarities. So it's also benefiting from the fact that it's never been printed in any of the highest rarities. Obviously, it has the DDS printing and Prismatic Secret Rare, but other than that, it really is just in a league of its own. Next up, we have Tier 1, which only has 2 cards. I put Dark Magician Girl MFC art and Dark Magician SDY art. I think that Dark Magician Girl is actually much better than Dark Magician in terms of collectability. I don't actually like Dark Magician Girl that much, but I'm just saying in general for most collectors, I think that Dark Magician Girl is number 2. And I think, if in Ghost from the Past we had a Dark Magician Girl Ghost Rare, I think it would outperform Dark Magician by quite a significant margin. And I think that's important to note. However, I can't think of really anything else besides SDK Artwork Blue Eyes that would outperform Dark Magician. Obviously, there are a bunch of other cool cards, but I think Dark Magician would outperform all of them. Tier 2. So at the top of Tier 2, we have Cyber Dragon, and then at the bottom of Tier 2, we have Rainbow Dragon. Coincidentally, both GX era cards, but not all the cards in Tier 2 are GX era. So the Tier 2 list, I've broken it into 5 sub-tiers. In Tier 2.1, which is the best, we have Cyber Dragon, which I believe to be the grail of GX. And I think that, Cyber End Dragon and Shining Flare Wingman get a huge bump because they are ultra ultimate rares, and those are much harder to pull than super ultimate rares. Now, I'm not going to get into all of that, but I think that Cyber Dragon is actually the best art, and specifically the Cybernetic Revolution art of Cyber Dragon, because I know it has an alternate art. I think that that is the best of the GX era, and I think it would outperform basically everything in the Dual Monsters era, with the exception of the 3 in the higher tiers. Then we have LOB Art Blue Eyes. I think that this card is still extraordinarily popular, and I think it would do extremely well. But it's not as good as the SDK Artwork Blue Eyes, and I don't think there would be a whole lot of pushback. After that, we've got Red Eyes Black Dragon. LOB SDJ artwork is what I'm considering here. I'm not going to go through all of these cards. There are certain cards that there's one artwork that's just so much better than the other ones and so much more iconic that it's not even worth mentioning. I'll just mention for the LOB art cards specifically. And then after that, we have the Egyptian God cards. I think these are super popular. Rage of Ra, was essentially carried by a Ghost Rare, Winged Dragon of Ra. There aren't a lot of cards that I think would be able to carry a set quite like that, where I am selling booster boxes of that set less than a year later at $100, essentially because there is one card in that set that people want. I don't think most cards in the lower tiers would be able to sell a set the same way that the Winged Dragon of Ra was able to single-handedly sell a set. Then after that, in tier 2.2, we've got Stardust Dragon, Black Rose Dragon, which actually, this week was announced to have a Starlight Rare in the new Lightning Overdrive set. However, with core sets, the Starlight Rares often are less collectible for collectors because they just don't care about core sets. But, I still think it's going to be a valuable card that people are going to want. Extraordinarily rare. It's just that with modern cards, it doesn't matter how hard it is to pull from a box, unless it's a limited release where they've limited it to 500 cards or something like that. It's just so common that, relative to cards from 2002 that have been lost, destroyed, they're all in terrible condition, etc. So, we'll see how the Black Rose Dragon does. I imagine it will be the best card in the set, but, it's a very, very sought-after card. That's a card that I think, will suffer a little bit from having too many high-rarity printings. The only rarity that's high rarity that it hasn't been printed in is Collector's Rare. But I think if it were to be, if it were to get a Collector's Rare printing, I think it would do extraordinarily well. And then to round out the tier 2.2, we've got Exodia. Specifically the Exodia head, but I'm sort of considering Exodia as a set where, you would want all 5 of them in the same rarity, I believe. Tier 2.3, we have our first non-monster card. We have Pot of Greed. Such an iconic card. I believe its ultimate rare is the top of... Excuse me. My throat is very dry. Should have drank more water before starting this. But I think Pot of Greed is doing the best out of any of the Duelist Pack Kaiba Ultimate Rares. And the Duelist Pack Kaiba Ultimate Rares are stacked. So it's a very, very collectible card. And, I think that Pot of Greed, if it were to get, a Ghost Rare printing, there wouldn't be a lot of cards that would outperform it. If it were to get a Starlight Rare printing, I don't think there would be a lot of cards that would outperform it. So I have it at 2.3. Maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, I don't know. And then after that, we have Jinzo, such an iconic card from the Duel Monsters era. I believe its secret rare is the best looking secret rare from the Duel Monsters era. Just a lot of people love it. And then we actually have the Arcana Art Dark Magician. I prefer this art to the SDY art and the LOB art. I just think that not as many people, are super keen on or super familiar with this art, but I think it would do extraordinarily well as well. 2.4, we start getting into a lot of the secret rares, and I think less known by casual fans, or I think if I was to bring these up with, my brother, for example, who doesn't collect Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but, we played Yu-Gi-Oh back in the day, he might remember them, but, they weren't iconic in the show, even though some of them did make a huge appearance in the show, with the exception of Blue Eyes Toon and Blue Eyes Ultimate. So I'm primarily talking about the Envoy, the beginning, and Envoy, the end. So to top it, we have Black Luster Soldier, Envoy, the beginning, such an iconic card. It did get recently that Collector Rares printing, which tops Toon Chaos. I think Ultimate Rare, if it got an OTS Ultimate Rare, it would do extraordinarily well. I keep saying extraordinarily, but I think it would do very well. Blue Eyes Toon, I think this card is due for a high rarity printing. I think this would be an incredible Collector's Rare. Incredible if it was put in Ghost from the Past. I really think that this is a card that is missing a high rarity printing, and a lot of people are waiting for this to be printed in one of those ultra high rarities. Then after that, we have Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy, the end. Iconic in that it sort of created the ban list. I think a lot of people like this card. It's due. It's not due. It has a lot of high rarity printings, ultimates, collectors, and its original secret rare. However, Starlight Rare and Ghost Rare I think would both look great on it. And then Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, another just classic Duel Monsters card that I think would perform quite well. 2.5, we've got Dark Magician Girl the Dragonite, which is one of the first, I guess, modern cards, although I think it came out in Dragons of Legend, which first released in the Zaxel era. But nonetheless, this is a card that I think is very, very collectible. Again, not something that I particularly like, but I think it would do very well in a high rarity printing. It's only a matter of time before it gets something like a Collector's or a Starlight. I don't think it will ever get an Ultimate or a Ghost, but if it does get a Ghost, it's going to cost quite a bit, and I think a lot of people will want it for the long term in their collection. Then we have one of the icons of the GX era. I know a lot of people put Shining Flare Wingman as the best elemental hero from the GX era for collecting, but I think Flame Wingman is actually better. The main reason I think that Shining Flare Wingman is more expensive is because of the UDS fakes that have been graded by PSA and the like, so the card is just much more common than the Shining Flare Wingman due to that. Yeah, so that's something to consider. And then rounding it out, we have Rainbow Dragon, the first Ghost Rare ever. But I still think that this would do very, very well as an Ultimate, which it has in the OCG, Starlight, Collectors, any of those. I think Rainbow Dragon would do very well. And I think anything in the Tier 2 list could carry a set if put in a high rarity. And that's sort of this distinction I'm making for Tier 2, whereas with Tier 3, I'm a little less confident that they could, fully carry a set, for example. Tier 3, we've got Blue Eyes Shining Dragon to Cyber Dark Dragon. Still, obviously, awesome cards. Maybe I'm overrating Cyber Dark Dragon a little bit, but there is quite a drop-off in sort of this tier list. 3.1, we've got Blue Eyes Shining Dragon, Dark Paladin, Cyber End Dragon, and the Sacred Beasts. All of these cards, I think, are very, very well liked. Blue Eye Shining Dragon. Maybe I could have put this in Tier 2, actually. I think if this got a Ghost Rare, it would be bonkers. I mean, this is a card that is very collectible. The Retro Pack 2 Secret Rare is obviously very iconic because of how hard it is to pull and how rare those Retro Pack 2 boxes are. Dark Paladin goes without saying. It's a very likable card. Cyber End Dragon, one of the most popular cards from the GX era. And then the Sacred Beasts also currently have Ultimate Rares, but nothing else in terms of high rarity. So I think those would do quite well. Tier 3.2. I put Morphing Jar here. I don't know. I think Morphing Jar is a sleeper. I think that this card, if it got like an Ultimate Rare, would be nuts. I think that it would go crazy if it got a super high rarity printing. I mean, this card, like, obviously a lot of its, ultra high value is from it being a tournament pack card. But, man, I think if it got a high rarity printing, it would blow some of these cards out of the water. Shining Flare Wingman, I think it would do well as well. And then we've got cards that aren't really anime cards, but, still very popular. We've got iconic Dark Arm Dragon, Judgment Dragon, and then Dark Magician of Chaos as well. Another very popular card from Invasion of Chaos that has an Ultimate Rare in the OCG, which these Ultimate Rares from the OCG also helped inform sort of where some of these cards would fall, helped normalize sort of where cards would be at. So Dark Magician of Chaos, I think, is still a very strong card. 3.3, we see some modern cards with Red Eyes Dark Dragoon and 10,000 Dragon. I don't think 10,000 Dragon will get a reprint. I really don't. But I just threw it in there just in case. I think part of the reason it's so valuable is because it's assumed to not get another reprint because it's a commemorative card. Now, Konami is known to do crazy, crazy reprints, so who knows? But I think it's reasonably safe to say that it won't be reprinted, but I wanted to throw it in anyways. Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, it's one of those cards that I think is becoming iconic because of how much it's played. Obviously, if it were to be released nowadays, it's such a playable card that most of the value or much of the value would be from it being playable, but I think that's long term. This is a card that's going to really stick with collectors, and this is something that I've had my eyes on. If it gets an Ultimate Rare printing in the OTS pack, this is something that I'm going to go in on. I think it would do quite well. Summon Skull, classic Dual Monsters card. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about that one other than a lot of people would want it. Ancient Gear Golem, I think it's a really popular archetype and well-loved card from Lost Millennium. Ghost Rare, Starlight Rare, I think they would all do quite well. Horus level 8, this is one of those really niche collector's cards, or not niche, but, it's not something that the casual fan is super aware of, but I think all, moderate to serious collectors are aware that Horus the Black Flame Dragon Ultimate Rare from Soul of the Duelist is like, it's a super, super, 1, rare card, 2, hard to get in good condition, 3, it has a place in a lot of high-end collections, I would say. And I think it would do well in one of those high rarities. 3.4, Toon Dark Magician Girl. This actually might be high. I might not be giving this enough credit. This is a card that, I don't know. People love Dark Magician Girl. I don't quite understand it, but, undeniable that I think this card would do well. Blackluster Soldier, I'm talking about the original Ritual monster. This card has an ultimate rare in the OCG, and it does very well. Karibo, very iconic card. I think if it were to get a high rarity printing, it would do well. Beaskull Dragon, popular ultra rare out of Metal Raiders. It's a dragon, so people will want it. And then rounding it out, we have Cyberdark Dragon. This is what I might be putting my own bias into. I really love this card, and it is quite a popular collector's card from the GX era, but that might be bolstered by the fact that hobby Cyberdark Impact boxes are so rare, and it's such a hard card to pull. Tier 4, we've got IP Masquerena to Thousand Dragon. IP Masquerena, this is a card I don't really care about, but I recognize that modern collectors who are getting into collecting right now love this card, as well as some other collectors as well. I think that of like the ultra modern Starlight rares, this is the one that I think is the best long term. Obviously there's Apollosa as well, but I think this is less playable than Apollosa, I believe, and it still holds a ton of value. If you haven't seen the Prismatic Art collection, they released an alt art of this. I don't know, it hasn't been released in the TCG, so I didn't put the alt art, but I think that is also an extraordinarily popular card, much more so than the Apollosa alt art, so we'll see. Waking Wing Karibo, not a whole lot to say. I think it would do well. Harpy's Pet Dragon has I'm forgetting the video game promo where it comes out of. Is it Forbidden Memories? I forget. I should know that. I think it would do well. Ash Blossom, even though it's very meta relevant, I think of the cards that are not like, I'm trying to think of a proper way to say this. There are a bunch of these Ghost Sisters that appear as secret rares, so they're reasonably hard to get from modern sets, and I think it's collectible because they appear in different sets, and you really have to like go out and get them from these different boxes. Whereas it's not something that all the cards are just in the same set. It's one is in each of these modern sets, and I think that this is going to be probably the best of those types of cards from the modern era. Now I explained that horribly, but I still think that these Ghost Sisters are going to do quite well long term, even after they sort of fall out of competitive meta relevance. I still think Ash Blossom, which is the best of the Ghost Sisters, will do well. Blue Eyes Alternative, it's a Blue Eyes card, don't really need to talk about that a whole lot. Red Dragon Archfiend, this is a card that is due for a Ghost Rare. I think it should have been a Ghost Rare and Ghost from the past. This is kind of like the Red Eyes Black Dragon of 5Ds. Obviously, it's less popular. 5Ds is a less popular series than Duel Monsters, but that's why I put it in Tier 4 instead of Tier 2. Never got a Ghost Rare. Has an Ultimate Rare, though, but I think it's due for a Ghost. Bell, another card that was originally printed as a super rare. This is, the main villain from GX. And very iconic card from GX. So I think that this, in high rarity, would do very well. Yata-Garasu, iconic, helped form the ban list along with Chaos Emperor. Obviously, Chaos Emperor is a little bit more well-loved by collectors, but I think Yata would still do well in high rarity. Tier 4.4, we've got Shooting Star, and then a bunch of different spells and traps, as well as Blue Eye Spirit and Time Wizard. All these cards are cards that I don't think could carry a set by themselves, but would still do quite well if they received, something like a collector's rare. I think Time Wizard would be a cool collector's rare in King's Court, for example. But we'll have to see. Tier 4.5, Trishula, I think really, Dragon of the Ice Barrier is what DOIB stands for. This is a card that I think really suffers. It already has a Starlight Rare, has an Ultimate Rare, has the Dual Terminal Rarity 1. I don't think it's as iconic as a lot of these Dual Monsters cards, and because it has all these like modern highest rarity versions, I think those would sort of eat away if it were to get something like a collector's rare printing. I think the Starlight would be a very direct competitor to that, and would make it not do as well. Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys. This is, I think, a less popular card, but I think it would still do very well. Honest, Thousand Eyes Restrict, Gemini Elf, Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of the Chaos, recently got that Ghost Rare, is competitively viable, which I think, made it do much better than it otherwise would, but I still think it's a really collectible card nonetheless. And then Thousand Dragon to round it out. Iconic card from Metal Raiders and from the show. Tier 5, we're running into, cards that really couldn't carry a set, I don't think, but still are very, very cool nonetheless. Tier 5.1, Chaos Sorcerer, Buster Blader, Gaia the Dragon Champion, and Graceful Charity. All very cool Dual Monsters cards that I think, still are very collectible. 5.2, we've got Relinquished, Gate Guardian, original 4 Elemental Hero Vanilla Monsters, so Aephion, Clayman, Sparkman, Burstinatrix, These have the secret rare from the Hero Collection, which is very rare and very expensive. I think these are very good picks for collector's rares. I think there might be some pushback from people who are salty, but I think these are actually really, really cool cards. Apollosa, Bow of the Goddess, modern card that I think would do well. 5.3, we've got Magic Formula. This is a card that I think is iconic because of how rare it was in that specific secret rare printing from Gladiator's Assault, but I don't think would do quite as well, nowadays if it were to get a high rarity printing. But, if this were to get a Starlight Rare, I think there would be a lot of people looking at it. And so I put it in the same tier as sort of these lower tier, 5Ds, or middle tier 5Ds Signer Dragons with Ancient Fairy Dragon and Majestic Star Dragon. 5.4, we sort of see the rise of Zexal. We've got Galaxy Eyes Photon, which I think is the best of the true Zexal era, cover cards. Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Dragon, which I think is a number 2. 2 Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, and then Red Eyes Black Metal Dragon. The FMR printing obviously is super rare, but it's secret rare, but it's incredibly rare as a video game promo. However, I still think it's a pretty collectible one. Gaia the Fierce Knight. Kind of the worst ultra rare from Legend of Blue Eyes, but had to put it in here nonetheless. I still think it would do well. Tier 5.5, I don't know what people think about this, but I put Toon World. Card that only really has the super rare printing, but I think this is one that would turn some heads and might also be a sleeper pick. Number 92, Hard Earth Dragon. Very, very cool card. Maybe this is personal bias putting it in, but I think this is one that's very collectible. And then rounding it out, we have some trap cards from the Dual Monsters era that I think are very iconic. And unlike something like Solemn Judgment or, a spell card like Mystical Space Typhoon, they haven't just been printed a million times and, have Ghost and Ultimate Rare printings already. So that's sort of the end of the tiers that I put out. Let me know what cards I'm missing, because I'm sure I missed some. This is just something I put together in a night. I didn't really do a ton of research. This isn't, the culmination of months of research and looking at prices and interviewing other collectors. This is just, what I put in a PowerPoint in, a couple of hours. So let me know. But it's been your boy, Watomarmelon. Let me know how it went, and see you guys in the next one. Peace out.